All rise for the pledge.
Oh, okay.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Alvarez.
Present.
Councilman Cypress.
Here.
Councilman Larka.
Here.
Councilman O'Connor.
Here.
Supervisor Hay.
Here. Notation of the exits in the front and the rear, an electronic device. Please put it on vibrate. I'd like to make the motion, open the work
Second.
session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First item on the agenda tonight is discussion for CCA info for Brewster Southeast. And we have Mr. Jeffrey Damansky. Just state your name for the record, if you would, please. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. My name is Jeffrey Damansky. I'm the executive director of a nonprofit based here in New York called the Center for Economic and Environmental Partnership. And I overwhelmed you with slides last time when we presented back in March, so I came with no slides tonight. Just in brief, I'm happy to answer questions about this program that's called Community Choice Aggregation. In a nutshell, it's a program that was enabled in New York State in 2016. And it is a way that municipalities can partner with approved organizations, approved by New York State, to bring a benefit to their community members. We were just in the audience discussing the multiple components and complexities of the energy marketplace. There are choices that people can make and have been able to make since the late 1990s in terms of alternative companies for their supply choice. In essence, you can't get away from NYSEG for delivery. They own the infrastructure, so your delivery portion of the bill, that's NYSEG. But there are dozens and dozens of companies that have registered to be supply companies. And NYSEG will make that the choice as an existing default established by the state. They will make that choice for their consumers that are their delivery customers. But there are many opportunities, other companies that offer different alternatives, including the ability to choose a price or choose the source from where that electricity is made. There's also community solar. A lot of people have heard about these solar farms that are happening around the state more and more. They're becoming quite prolific. It's something separate than electricity supply, but it's something where somebody can, if they don't have solar on their home or business, they can subscribe to be a subscriber to a solar farm and receive a monetary benefit for doing so. There are also numerous opportunities that the municipality has probably been exposed to consider projects on buildings or on property that are municipal projects, properties that could be projects. So it is, with the understanding of the different components of the utility bill, all these different project opportunities, it can be very, very overwhelming. In that supply marketplace for the individual customers over the last 30 years, there have been a lot of companies that have come to the attention of individuals and the state that have been bad actors. So in a nutshell, CCA is a mechanism by which a municipality, by passing a local law, which does not commit it to actually launch a program, it just gives it the ability to explore doing a program, but can bring, one, an education benefit to their community members, and if it makes sense to do either a supply program or a community solar project, or to develop a project underneath this regulatory mechanism, it can bring benefit to the community members. But at the very least, I would say, just in a nutshell, indicated by the significant legislation passed since we last met in March, the Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure bill that passed before that, there is a lot of activity that is demonstrated, an investment that is demonstrating that we are in an evolution from this existing grid that we've had for numerous decades that is largely vulnerable and inefficient, and a move towards a more efficient and distributed power-sourced grid that will be much more resilient to storm damage and everything else. In that movement towards that new and resilient grid, there are significant opportunities structured by policy mechanisms for consumers, but it can be overwhelming for them to vet them, to decide what is good and what is bad, especially because there have been many bad actors in the energy marketplace. So CCA, and this is my closing statement, it is a way that a municipality can partner to vet opportunities, to optimize offers to their community members, and to protect them if a program launches, The municipality enters into an agreement on behalf of their community members. So nobody is in a contract. Nobody is forced into a contract that has any hidden fees or penalties of the sort, so that they can benefit from that transition to the newer grid. So I've said a lot, but in essence, that's what it's about. It's about a partnership to bring benefit to community members.
Thanks, Jeff. I have a few questions.
Me
Unless
too.
anyone else does. A few people reached out to me about this, and I've talked to a few people that I think have either done this or explored it. So I have a few questions. So what is your success rate, and not looking for a figure, of communication with residents? Because I've told, the feedback that I got is no matter how hard you try to push it out there, you're only going to get half, and half are going to not be happy with it or not informed.
Well, I think, yeah, the first statement, no matter, in this busy world that we live in with so many important things to pay attention to, and the fact that there's only so much that we can pay attention to, despite our very robust efforts, I think your statement is correct. We reach about half the community members with information about the program during an education period that is built into the regulatory structure. So if and when a program launches, and we've launched it with 16 other communities here in the Hudson Valley, there are a number of people that when the program launches, if it launches, and they receive a letter announcing the program, this is the first time that they are recognizing that this is happening. There's a number of structures that my nonprofit is actually in the lead of being a resource to address, to be there for those people to learn about what's happening. Phone numbers, emails, the website, it's all there to answer their questions. And while it is surprising, once they understand what the program is, they're actually quite excited for the most part. There's definitely a contingent, probably about 15 to 20% of community members decide for one reason or another they don't want to be part of it, and they can opt out of the program. But
When you opt
a
out-
vast majority is happy with the program.
If you opt out, can you opt back in?
Yes.
At any
Yep.
time?
Anytime.
You mentioned the delivery from NYSEG. Is that regulated, and if a lot of people went onto this CCA program, could they jack up the delivery rates, or is that not a scenario?
They can't. They do request, there's a regulatory requirement oversight of utilities on the rates that they charge for delivery. And when they want to raise their delivery rates, they have to file a rate case, a formal request to raise their rates that has a public comment period and has review by the Public Service Commission. They would not, since the structure of deregulation in the state since the 90s, utility companies are not allowed now, and since the 90s, to make money on supply. It's a pass-through for them. So there's no reason that they would have a good justification for people going into this program to raise up their delivery rates.
Got it. Is now, it feels a little bit like we missed the ship on doing something like this with rates being higher now. What are your thoughts on that?
It's working. It's still working. There was just a request for proposals for supply rates issued for the Rockland communities that are part of it. There are 6 communities and 4 more added to the program. This is fresh. It happened last week. And they achieved a rate that was satisfactory to all 10 communities. It is, for the renewable rate, it is very, very close with the existing non-renewable rate, that the average rate that the utility has charged for the past 12 months. So the structure of the program, because it brings benefit to the suppliers as well, the certainty of demand for them is appealing. So it still does work. Westchester, actually, there's 26 communities that just renewed in the last 3 months. So it is still working, and there are satisfactory rates being obtained through the process for the communities.
Are there examples where there's unsatisfactory rates or it's not working?
Sure, it was weird. I mean, we've been living through a very strange time, I guess, in many ways. It's an understatement. But in the energy marketplace, it's been very strange. So Westchester did issue a request for proposals 3 months prior to that, about 6 months ago, and they did not get a rate that was satisfactory. It was just too uncertain. So the suppliers were like, we don't know where the marketplace is going. Our indicatives don't give us confidence to set a fixed rate for the program. And so they offered indicative pricing, and it was not appealing to anybody. In fact, the administrator, and this is the role of the administrator that you would choose, they are your guide. They're there for you. And they, in this case, Westchester's administrator was like, this is not a good time. We don't recommend anyone proceed with this. And so they waited another 3 months for an RFP issuance.
Okay. when you go through this process, is the answer typically clear at the end of the RFP and whether or not you should go, or is it still considerably a gamble?
Well, there's always a risk of a fixed rate in its comparison to the utilities variable rate. But the indicatives, the experience that have been had in the marketplace, it is fairly clear that, that it's a good decision to proceed. And there's, it's important to make an apples to apples versus an apples to orange comparison. Most people have focused on this program for the supply. In essence, I've called it in shorthand a buying club for supply, like a Costco, if you will, led by municipalities for their community members. And most people have focused on an apples to oranges comparison. And in this case, it would be a green apple, because our program does, and one of the reasons the state promoted this was that you can have this wonderful have your cake and eat it scenario where you could get a fixed rate for 100% renewable sourced supply from New York State sources that is very competitive, and in the programs we've been involved with is sometimes and often lower than what I would call the brown variable rate from the utility. So that's an apples to oranges comparison. But in the open marketplace, all those energy supply companies that are out there, many of them offer for individuals a comparable 100% renewable rate. But that is always much higher for an individual because they have no leverage than what the municipal program can get. So it's always an economic benefit that the community program brings versus what an individual could do in that apples to apples comparison.
Okay. And I just have one more question. So if we were to pass this local law, it basically allows us to pursue this further, right? Nothing else, nothing more. And then you had mentioned, aside from opting into this a provider, this law would open other opportunities for projects and benefits. Is that right? And could you expand upon that?
Yeah, I think I used it. I hope I did. I'm pretty sure I looked at the slides that we did back in March, and I used the analogy of a Swiss Army knife, that the local law is basically the body of the knife, and that in that body there are multiple tools built into the Public Service Commission's regulatory structure. One, the main tool that's been used to date is a buying club for electricity supply. A second tool is it can be utilized to promote adoption, subscriptions to community solar projects for people for whom that is, makes sense if they don't have solar of their own or if they don't already have a community solar subscription. There are other tools that are being utilized by other programs. For example, Westchester has used a couple of other tools. They use this buying club model to offer significant discounts on electric vehicle purchasing and for electric vehicle charging for consumers within the communities. It is very much envisioned as a way to promote, as I mentioned in brief, a very good pathway, kind of a free built-in consultant for potential local project development, typically solar, but could be wind or hydropower, with close within municipal borders. So it's a very good mechanism to promote that can be part of the program as well, offering the supply or the renewable sourcing for the programs.
And is there a commercial benefit program? Like if we had a large commercial project coming in, does passing this law help them make an investment in large scale solar?
It can be, and there's examples of where that's been done. Red Hook had a project that they developed, and it was offered to the community members, and it made it more financially attractive for the developer to do that project. I think that's what you're asking. Yes.
Yes. Okay. Okay. That answers all my questions. Anyone else have any?
Good. Can I go,
Yeah.
It feels a little odd that you have to pass a local law to pursue it. What's the gist of the local law?
The local law is a supplementation, if you will. It's an addition to the existing deregulation rule that exists in New York State. The deregulation back in the 90s, when it broke apart the monopoly that utilities had on being able to own supply and make money on supply decision, it created that supply marketplace, but it made a default, and it created all the ability for all those supply companies to start offering their product. But the state had to establish a default in that regulatory process. And the default that they established is if a utility customer makes no decision of their own, the default setting is that the local utility company makes a supply decision for that customer. So the local law is required for a new default. In essence, the municipality typically in partnership, in aggregation with other communities, says we are going to establish a new default, an additional choice. It doesn't displace the original option. If anybody wants to stay with the original default, they can. They can opt out of the program. But a local law is required for this new default situation, this new opt-out structure.
So, so if we were to go ahead with this, by default, a resident would be in the program with the RFP and the supplier that we chose.
Yes, as long as they didn't already have a supply contract, or they didn't have a block on their account with the utility saying that they want to stay with the default, that they weren't somebody on an assistance payment program. So there's a number of people who are automatically defaulted out, but people for the most part, 80% typically, for whom the utility is making that supply decision are automatically included in the supply buying club.
Okay. I guess it's a little concerning to Eric's comment that 50% of the people don't ever get the communication, so it feels a little weird to opt them in at that point.
I have a follow-up question to your question. So currently, our power is supplied almost like this buying club, right? Except NYSEG or somebody's making that decision.
Correct.
So if we were to do this, we dilute the buying power that we have currently, and right, because we would be shifting to a new provider, so you'd have multiple providers. Will that drive up the cost for our current provider that we have?
No, it's marginal differences, and it's a question that is often asked, like, how could you compete? Well, there's several components in there to the answer. For one, there's such a large customer base, and once you reach a threshold of a certain customer size, it doesn't make a difference beyond that for suppliers bidding for that demand base. The same is true for an aggregation. When you assemble a number of communities and have a number of accounts within there, we say that kind of the sweet spot of customers for being appealing to suppliers is somewhere between 15,000 and 80,000 accounts. Short of that, it's hard to have competitive ability. Above that, marginally, it doesn't really make a difference in terms of their willingness to be more competitive for the rate. So there's a zone outside that. So, typically utility is going to have customers way more than that top level threshold. So there would be no impact on their buying power for what they do on supply.
So I think what you were saying was, would it be possible that NYSEG, as the supply, raise their rates because they lost so much business to whoever we chose for a CC?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. No,
Yeah.
it wouldn't,
Okay.
because they have
Because
such a large
NYSEG
customer
already
base
is at
as it
the top
is.
of that.
It wouldn't
Okay.
make a difference.
And just to follow up on that, I think we have like 9,000 parcels in town or something. So it doesn't seem like we'd hit that threshold, especially because 9,000 wouldn't convert. And I don't know if that includes commercial, but it would almost think we'd have to partner with other towns in order to hit that threshold where this is going to
Yep,
be.
and thus the term aggregation in the term community choice aggregation, and that's on the administrator. And it's not even an issue anymore because there's such levels of interest in this. There's always other partners that an aggregator, that the administrator will partner a community with to reach a good threshold.
Got it. So they would partner outside of, so we
Yep.
wouldn't have to go to another town. They would bring in other customers.
That's right.
to
And
price it with us.
there's no cost for the town to do this, except for, opportunity cost of time for the town, the council to review the agreements and such that the town would engage in. And it's turnkey in terms of all the program responsibilities. All the outreach and education is upon the administrator and the outreach team that they have for that. There's no requirements, no burden on the town to do anything for the program. It has become very turnkey.
Are you familiar with any other towns in Putnam or maybe Northern Westchester, Dutchess that have already done this?
Yeah, so in Putnam, it's Phillipstown and Cold Spring. Nelsonville's about to go. That's on the east side, over on the river. Dutchess, there's Beacon, Poughkeepsie, Clinton, Red Hook. They've all been involved. I'm trying to think of others. There might be some others as well. Fishkill used to be involved and chose not to continue. Excuse me.
How long do you usually lock in with an RFP rate?
Typically, when an RFP is issued, there'll be a range of opportunities presented, everything from typically 12 months up to 5 years. and you look at the optimal choice within there in terms of pricing and the duration, commonly it's been about 18 months to 2 years has been the normal one that's selected.
Okay. I had nothing else.
Other than passing a local law by the town, what other items do we have to involve ourselves with going forward?
So law, and then selecting an administration choice, and typically it's choosing an existing approved administrator. And then it's assisting, giving guidance to the outreach and education period. There's a minimum of 60 days of outreach and education that's required. So it's just giving guidance on what is the best way to reach citizens. And then if it's decided after that point to continue to explore the market, it's interacting with the administrator on what would go into the request for proposals. You know, do you have a preference on the sourcing? Do you have a requirement on the price benchmark that is a no-go beyond that? And after that, if you decide to be part of an RFP issuance, it's reviewing the proposals, and if something comes back that's satisfactory, there's still a yes or no point at that point in time. But if you say yes, then a program launches. And then communications would come out, when the letter is issued, it comes from the town to say that this program is launching if that decision is made.
Has any municipality put it to the voters prior to signing up?
No, they've not.
Would you be able to share rates of some of these communities that Eric asked about, like Phillipstown, Cold Spring, Red Hook, to see where they're locked so we could do a comparison?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's some archaic, just because the market was at a different point.
Yeah.
But it was a 3-year contract that was entered into in 2021, and that was a magnificent 6.5 cent supply rate. In Central Hudson right now, Central Hudson's rate, its most current rate is 17 cents per kilowatt hour. So that was amazing. But for comparison, the Orange and Rockland customers in Rockland County that I mentioned, the average rate I think has been about 11 cents over the last 12 months. And the rates that just came in that they accepted were right about that same mark, about 11.5 cents.
Okay.
Jeffrey, is there, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Is there a draft or default template for this local law?
Oh yeah, there is.
I think we have that.
Okay.
Or sent it still or something. I was just going to make a comment that it seems simple enough, but it seemed like it'd be extremely complicated and complex to implement.
Something scares me about it.
Yeah, me too.
You make it sound very easy, but.
It's not. I would not convey that it's
Yeah.
easy. And just in essence too, I'm biased because of the work that I do, but because the energy marketplace is so complex, there's so many moving parts and they're not static. It is another beautiful benefit that you bring to your community when you do this program, even if you don't launch it. But given the state of the world and the evolution in the grid, it's beautiful to bring this education opportunity to your community members so that people are more informed about what's happening.
If we were to pass a local law, what's the timeline? You may have touched upon this again, or if you could again.
Excuse me. From a local law to a launched program,
Yeah.
it's about 10 months on average.
And you come to like a meeting a month to give updates, or?
Yep, I used to, in the pre-pandemic days, I would do office hours too, and just to be available for people to answer questions or to assist them.
Okay. Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thanks for having me back.
I
Oh,
think you
sure.
guys covered it all.
Yeah, I need clarification, maybe I
Yes.
misunderstood, so I don't want to put words in your mouth. You talked about basically there's an aging, grid out there, which we know. So we're gonna get other suppliers to supply, but it's still being delivered, just to pick on the current vendor, it's still being delivered by that aging grid or whatever. So, I just didn't understand what the benefit would be, aside from getting the cheaper rate, and we're making it up 6 cents versus 11, if it's still gotta go through the same old grid, I still may have a power outage or whatever, so just clarification.
It does
on
to a
that.
degree, but the beauty of, even in the first tool that we talked about being deployed, the big knife and the Swiss Army knife analogy of the buying club for supply, the beautiful thing about what that does is that it creates a significant pool of demand, guaranteed demand for a fixed period of time, for renewable developers in New York State to know that they've got a significant off-taker, is a term, of that supply, which encourages development of more local projects all around the state. And coupled with that, the reason they get easier to make is because with that guaranteed demand, that pull from these municipal aggregations, it makes the financing even more appealing for them. So it really does grease the wheels for more projects to happen. And the more projects that happen, the more distributed is the term, the power sourcing is on the grid. There's more local projects, including, we haven't talked about, but batteries, storage in various forms are a significant portion and are being built into these programs as well. In essence, a battery storage facility becomes a power producer during off production times, which levels out, brings resiliency to the grid, but is actually a wonderful money-saving opportunity for consumers as well in leveling the prices. So picture, because of these programs being a significant demand pull, there is catalyzation, there's greasing of the wheels for all of these projects around, which means that it's not the same old grid. There's a lot more production sources with shorter runs between power production and the consumers, which in almost by itself creates a much more resilient grid.
So it's like a macro, us joining has a macro benefit.
It really does.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, Ed, I think, day one, nothing's changed. It's
Right.
going over the same thing, but, hopefully it makes people invest and things
Right.
get better in the future.
Thank you.
All right, thank you again.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
So you'll send those, can you send those rates as a follow-up?
Oh, sure, I can send you some of the indications from the other programs, absolutely. And if you want to talk about a date as we communicated about for another public hearing, I'm happy to coordinate for that as well.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 2 on discussion amend chapter 138 signs, number 12. Now, I'm going to distribute a package to each of you. I'm going to ask you, when you get it, just to keep it in the same order that it is, because I don't want to mention names. I will mention just the,
Is this for Michelle?
that's Michelle. I'm just going to mention a street number as opposed to what road it's on. You can see it. And I'll ask for them back when we're done, because I don't think today's the last day we're going to be discussing it. Okay, so the first one that you have, now, here's what's going on. This year has created a lot of talk about signs being removed from the roadways. It's been in place for a while. I'm asked, why is it so much different this year? Everything went really smoothly last year. Well, I really couldn't come up with a really concrete answer, but then when I looked at the voting of last year compared to this year, this is a year where there's much more involvement of voters. Last year, there was like hardly any local elections, so we didn't have the interest of what was going on. That might be part of it, don't know. Now, at our last meeting, we had this law. Now, we all know how this took place a long time ago. Sign was pulled off private property, went to a federal court. The town lost. We had to redraft it. It took, the initial law that we passed probably took about 6 months of review by the Architectural Review Board, which was separate at the time, the Planning Board, the ZBA. There was probably a team of 5 to 7 that prepared the law, and then, of course, it got challenged. And then after the last round, where we were sued, the challenge, it was revised because a temporary sign is a generic sign. It's not just an election sign. It's CPR Tony and, buy my house for free and, whatever the sign may be. And they're all over. It's not just, this is not a sign law. It's a temporary sign law. So at the last meeting, because of the controversy, we decided to just kind of pick an arbitrary number, that 5 feet from the edge of a curb for residential and 15 whatever. Now, my understanding was I had called the building inspector, I believe, the very next day and explained to him what it was and that we were going to remove the section about the names on the back of the sign, which we had discussed that evening. And then somehow, some signs did get pulled by the department. How, why, don't know. But there were signs that were alleged to have been taken by the town, and we weren't out taking signs that day, so I don't know where they went. But let's put everything to the side. I put together a package on some of the ones that have become of interest to us, and I put it together tonight to show you the problems we are going to have with whatever we do. Now, the first one in your package is 128, okay? See that one? Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the very first page, it identifies the name of the road. Now, there's a black line with like 4 dots, and then you see what looks like a stone wall behind it, okay? The property line of that particular property is behind the stone wall. Now, I had told the building department way back when, here's our law, it's 15, but if you go out and if there's a guardrail, anything to the opposite side of a road, okay, is, I would say, legal. Not taken out a ruler to measure, and if it was on the roadside, it would not. That's what we went by in the past. It seemed to work pretty well, but that's not really the law. But we changed it now, this year, to 5. But if you look at that stone wall, now when you turn the page,
Just, if you could just, there's a line on both sides of the stone wall.
yes, the first line, the line in front of the stone wall is like, I won't even say it's a town right away. The property line of the owner,
This black one. Well, there's
the
two of
property,
them.
the property line of the owner is behind the stone wall. So here's the
Right,
name of
but
the.
he's saying something different now.
No, wait. No, I was explaining how I would have interpreted it in the past.
No, just,
But this
which one's the property line?
property line is the dark one behind the stone wall,
Right, that's different than what you just said. Yeah.
okay?
So you're saying the stone wall is not on his property?
Right. Now, not saying that person put it up, they may or may not have. Mine's gonna be the last one we're gonna show, and I'll identify mine as being mine. But
So what does this other line represent?
that one, I couldn't find out exactly what it is. But we're interested, we're saying, people are saying we're taking it from their property, just to indicate it's not. I don't know what that is, because I couldn't find out.
Well, there's two lines. I just want
There's
to
two
know
lines.
which one we're
The
talking
pro-
about.
Okay, we're talking, people said they took a sign from my
I
property,
get that, but how do you know this is the property line, not this one?
because we know that's the property line. Because all the ones I'm gonna show you, the property line is indicated that way. But I'll find out, I don't know who made this one, I can't find out. We went down to the town records, and we had this on record. Now, I sent my secretary down, to get probably almost 24 of these, and unfortunately, most of the ones she came back with, unfortunately, did not identify the location of the road. They had a survey of their property, but not its proximity to the road, so I couldn't use it, okay? So the bottom line is, these, you see that bottom line, was it the line? Bottom line, okay. So these solid lines is the property, and that's it. Now, when you lift up the picture, no names of property, who it is, we're not going by property, but you can see, there's a stone wall, okay? So, from the stone wall toward the road is town property, or in the right of way, okay? And we said 5 feet. I didn't take a measurement, it may be 5 feet, may not. But the signs were in front of that there, so what we said with the 5 feet, at this point in time, would not hold true on this particular property. That's why when we go to craft this later on, we have to think of wording we can use so it wouldn't be, because you can't have words in the law and go back and change them,
Why couldn't 5 feet work here?
because it's not their property.
But the law says 5 feet or the property line, whichever is less.
Yeah.
Fine.
So 5 feet would be less.
But I don't know if it is 5 feet. I have to go out and measure, but I just want to show you there's going to be problems. We'll get into more as we go. That's one of them, okay?
But I think the root problem is we're going to the 5 or the 15, not the or, whichever is less. So
So
5.
we're going to just go 5 feet and not, or?
No, it's 5 feet or the property line, whichever is less. So in this case, 5 feet would be less. He could put a sign right here and there'd
Okay,
be no problem.
if it's 5 feet, again, I don't want to be taking out a tape measure and saying it's only 4 feet, 3/4 inches.
Neither do I, but that's what's
Well,
going on
that's-
pretty much.
Well, we don't, let's go through the rest of them.
That's fine.
Let's go to the next one. This one has a big black whatever. Now, on this one, the property line, I gotta figure out whose property this is. Oh, I know whose it is, okay. So you see that's a driveway, that black, okay? And I did highlight in yellow. Now, you see where the stone wall is there? That's in the town right away. And you see the line underneath it, solid with the lines? That's the property owner,
Okay.
okay? Now, these signs that are up are not on their property. Now, again, however we word it, we have to word it so that these signs can be there, because we kind of all agree that if someone maintains a property, as nice as that property is, they should be allowed to put a sign there, or whatever. So however we craft the new wording of the law, we have to make sure that that's allowable. That's that one. Let's go to the next one.
Are we making recommendations? to
No,
change the
no,
law now?
we're gonna, this, again, this is not gonna be, when we write up a law, the next law, I mean, we just can't go and have a public hearing. We have to make sure, we all have to agree, we can all write whatever we wanna write up and discuss it, and what's the best way to do this?
I would just, I did some measuring in my house. I would just make it 3 feet, and I think 3 feet's far enough, and it would solve a lot of these issues.
Okay, well, some yes and some no. Now, the next one is that one there, okay? Now, if you lift it up, you all recognize the location, okay? This one I'll talk about after the meeting. And I'll tell you why at that time. I'll just discuss with each individual one why that one's there, okay? So just put that one aside.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that being a difficult one, but yeah,
It
we'll
is,
talk about
okay?
it.
But again, when we write something, we have to make it one size fits all somehow, but that one's a problem. Now, on the next one, which is the last one, and we may recognize that one as well. We said so in the past, the way I would have interpreted, a stone wall in front of and maintained would be good, which is whatever, and this one's behind, but the property line for that particular property is down here. It identifies the name of the road. Here's the person's property line, and there's the guardrail. So the guardrail and that person's property, there's a big difference. So however we word it, we have to make it so one size will fit all. And I just brought this to identify that.
Yeah, then, I don't think you could make anything one size fits
Yeah.
all.
But it has to be though.
Well, no, it could apply to everybody, and there could be some properties that can't legally put a sign.
Okay?
But I want to fix 99% of the problem.
So, and that's the wording we have to come up with. I don't think the wording we came up with is sufficient.
I do, and especially if you move it to 3, like Eric suggested. I mean, if you go back to 128, I mean, I think that's 5 feet there, but if you go, even if it's not 5, you make it 3 feet.
But now we're going to 3 though. But it's a change from what we said the last time.
That's fine, yeah.
And then
I
we
mean,
go to-
but I think 5 even works, but.
I mean, I look at, never mind the fact that, people, the public in general is happy that, we've cut back on signs and stuff and the town looks more beautiful and stuff. And just putting that aside, I look at all of these pictures and I know I'd be guilty at my house. Like, there's no way I'm gonna be 5 feet or 15 feet in. I go right to the edge. I got stone walls as well. I go right over the stone walls and I put my sign right there. So I think there should just be a way to basically exclude, like, if it's in front of your house or whatever, even if technically I don't own the road, I personally don't want to quibble. I mean, like I
Right.
said,
And
I'm guilty of just
Well, today it's.
putting a
15
sign there. and-
Today it's 15 feet, which is, I think, unreasonable for people's private
Right,
property.
15,
So we
15
picked
feet
around
can,
5 last
it can be in
time.
the woods on your
Right.
property,
Right. I think you need some number, Ed,
And-
because you do want to respect sight lines and that kind of thing.
I'm good with 3 feet.
Yeah,
I
so-
mean,
And you don't
3
need a
seems
ruler.
good.
And you don't need a ruler.
and
Well, I think we
unfortunately,
need
you
to go
can't say
back to
common sense. Well,
If it's, you don't need a ruler to measure 3 feet.
No.
If it's not stuck on the edge of the pavement and it's somebody's maintained front yard, we should leave it
And
alone.
that's why we should, but that's the way we should write it up. It's not written that way now.
Yeah.
If someone maintains the property,
Well, I mean, this is
Well,
is
it's,
this maintained?
it's
That's
gonna
not
get,
maintained.
right, it's gonna get
So, I
semantics,
think
right?
the 3
Like,
feet
all the
covers it.
leaves from
But
my
now- but
property
again-
went over the stone wall, and now my property's not maintained, but meanwhile, yes, it is. I'm waiting for my landscaper to
Well,
come,
so the one I show you later on,
Right, yeah,
now we're just gonna send you out mine just for, because I didn't know where my property line was until I went to put up a fence. And I found out. Now,
I think, again, residential should almost be excluded for lack of, and I don't know how to word it.
Yeah, that's-
I'm just saying, to a certain degree, it should just be almost excluded, and, commercial may be different if it's truly, in the line of sight, or this or that, on somebody else's property.
and again,
but-
when we do temporary sign, don't forget, real estate signs are considered temporary signs. So prior to, we have to look at whatever kind of signs that can go up to make sure they're all included and there's no arbitrary and capricious ruling of someone going out and then looking at something. So on this one here in particular, that's my street. There's the edge of the road. Now, my property doesn't start until that fence. Now, if I wanted to put a sign here, I think I should.
And I would agree.
My neighbor down
I
the
would
road-
agree with you.
And 5 foot would have covered that. And
And 3
will
foot
definitely
width.
encompass-
Yeah.
I would agree with you 100%. I wouldn't quibble over that.
But we have to write it, whenever we write it up, and we'll have to ask Will to write it up, we'll circulate it before, and bring it back one more time with the exact wording, and then bring it to a public hearing and get approved on. Okay?
My recommendation for that would be
I'll take those all back down.
3 feet for residential. And I think it's all, I don't think we have to make a law perfect. I don't think any of our laws are perfect.
Yeah, but
And,
don't forget, it has to pass muster at some point in time.
And now, I'm not suggesting that this is good and that Will or Ashley or whoever should review it, but this was my attempt
Okay,
at
so,
changing things.
Is it-
And obviously, I wrote 5, but I'm totally in favor of Eric and Edwin's suggestion of 3, so.
Thank you.
so we'll
So,
read
so,
it, and
so,
then
so
we'll-
bold italics is new, and number 8, we're just striking through that whole section on the thing. But bottom line, Ed, and I know you weren't at the last meeting, was this says 5 feet for residential zones, 15 feet for non-residential zones, and we're saying now 3 instead of 5.
Right. And trying to even be fair on the 15 for like commercial, for like, again, that could be, you could be in the woods at that point. You know, you could have a commercial property and 15 feet from wherever is, you know, I can't see it now, so.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, generally,
Right?
there's not political signs in, on commercial property.
Right.
It's for other types of signs. And, if we want to discuss non-residential, I'm okay with that. I think, Eric, I think we'd originally suggested 5 for everybody. That made Tony uncomfortable, so we came up with a compromise. I mean, if we wanted to open up both, I'd say 3 and 10, but.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if you're a
I would
property
second.
if you're a commercial owner and you want to put, well, just pick on me, and you want to put my sign up there, you should be allowed to, as long as it's on your property, and,
It's a good point, because even a commercial property that's for sale, like if you drive 22 in front of Acme, there's, commercial space for lease, and
Right.
and those aren't 15 feet, and I think those signs are important to be out there.
Now-
Yeah, so is there a number that, I mean, I know I just threw out 3 and 10, I think that solves commercial, but is there a number you're more comfortable with?
Well, I think one thing we have to add to what you suggested, and I also went to the state to see what kind of rules and regulations they have. They don't allow them on interstates, interstate intersections, and things of that nature, okay? Now, one thing that I did read that we should probably, that no matter where the sign is located, if it's even 3 feet, that it can't, and we should write in here, cannot interfere with the sight distance, line of sight distance.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you have that in there?
Well, in number 7, it says it can't create a hazard, disturbance to
Right.
health, safety, and welfare, so I assume that covered sightlines.
Temporary signs.
Under number 7?
and again, I think then it's semantics, or we get into a gray area of it's subjective. Well, that sign is in the line of sight, and I'm making it up, Eric Cypress is taller than me. It doesn't.
Everyone's taller than
When
you.
exactly, when he's driving, it doesn't obscure his line of sight. I'm shorter and I'm driving like, oh, I can't see the
Yeah,
curb,
but you got an SUV and he's got a Honda.
So I think we have to, again, not get too much into the weeds of, we're not going to be able to address every single problem,
Yeah,
and
I
whatnot.
think that's well covered by what's
Right.
there already.
And then now this includes, this is not just political signs, now this would also apply to real estate signs as well.
Yep.
We're going 3 to 10.
Yeah.
3 and 10, is that the numbers now?
That's what I suggested.
Okay.
I would agree. And, I just want to make a point. This sign law is our focus to go out and look for temporary signs day in and day out? Because I just want to say, we have a lot of other codes that properties are out of compliance on, and I see this as low priority and low hanging fruit overall.
I just see this as, we have something in writing, so if we choose to enforce, and again, just picking on political signs, they're still out there January 1st, we can at least then, we have a leg to stand on and say, oh my God, we gotta go around town and get rid of these signs, you know, they've been there for 2 months.
Well,
Right.
that we could have done anyway, because there is the
Right.
30 days in the
But-
code now. So I mean, I agree with both of you, but I agree with Eric, you know, that I think there are other things we should be focusing on, and the reason why I asked to put this on the agenda, actually, honestly, is to take some focus off of it. So if we, you know, make it where more signs in residential property are allowed and we're not picking them up,
Well,
we can
this,
focus on
again,
other things.
this goes on at least 9 months a year. And I mentioned like CPR, hay, or whatever,
But
buy
most
buy
of-
your house.
But no private property is putting CPR Dave in front of their house. So the CPR Dave signs are almost always illegal and should just be pulled.
Right.
You're not putting a CPR Dave in front of your house, Edwin's not putting a CPR
Right,
Dave
that's
in
the
front of his
vendor,
house.
you
I said,
know,
hey, not Dave.
the
Well,
win,
but it
that's,
is CPR Dave.
that's
I'm not
whoever,
advertising for anybody.
Sorry.
that's the window guy just going around town, you know, advertising his business.
Well, yeah, that's fine, you get your
Yeah,
driveway paved, but,
exactly.
so he's gotta put it 3 feet off, that's reasonable.
Exactly.
If they want to post it accordingly, okay.
So, Eric, I don't know if you were done or agreed on the 3 and 10, or,
Yeah, I second.
okay, you guys good with 3 and 10?
I'm fine.
Instead of 5 and 15?
Oh, yeah, I mean,
Okay.
and even.
Okay, so what
again,
I'm gonna
I don't wanna
do-
push it even, I think 10 is even,
So what I'll do
absurd,
is,
but-
I'll take your,
You were here when you made it 15.
okay, we'll reword this now.
I'll email this to you, so you don't have to retype it.
No, wait, we'll put it in the actual, I can do this. You can send it to me. in the-
I'll email it to you
But the
tonight.
bottom line is,
Yeah.
I have the law already in Word set up, so we can just cut and paste it into.
Yeah,
law.
that's what this is, but
Okay.
I'll just give you my changes, you do
And
it as you see
we'll
fit.
put it not so much on the agenda, if we all agree with what we want into the article, into the, public hearing notice, we'll set, let's see, we can't make what's the next date of we won't get it in as the next agenda, so it's
I have it up here, I can tell you in a second.
it won't make the next agenda.
17th is the next meeting.
No, it won't make that one, December, what's the meeting in December?
First.
December 1st? So we'll do it tonight, set a public hearing for December 1st, to give us time to get it into the paper.
I don't know.
Okay, set public hearing, December.
Peter's got a question
Who?
Or a statement,
or a statement.
or he's just saying hello.
I don't know. Yeah, come on up. We're afraid.
Peter Bell, Code Enforcement Officer. I think, as a code enforcement officer, am putting myself at risk to take some of these signs. There should be a fine for anybody that puts a sign where they're not supposed to be. And what I mean about that, I went on 684 to each entrance of 84 where there were 5 signs in that triangle. I stopped the car and picked up the signs. They have no responsibility of putting those signs there other than somebody's taking them away. And what happens when it's not January 1st? I think it says within 5 days. What's their incentive to take away these signs?
But how do you-
Anybody.
Who put the sign up? Who do you find? The guy, the name on the sign, they didn't put it up. You can't find anybody.
And if you know, I know what you're talking about, and you're
Okay.
clearly not allowed to put a sign there.
Okay.
So if they're choosing to break the law, they're gonna choose not to put their name and address on the back of the sign. So who
I
would you
agree.
find to
So
put these
can't you
signs?
find the person whose sign it is, whose
No,
name is on the
That would be
sign?
fair.
I don't care if it's a political sign or AJ buys houses. If you're putting it in a location where it is a danger to pick up that sign to do my job, why am I being put in danger and they have no consequence for having that sign on that highway?
Okay,
I
the one you
totally-
mentioned,
I'm sorry.
the
I
one,
meant-
the one that you mentioned about the person buying houses, we tried to locate that person. I believe he's somewhere in Arizona. He didn't respond to any of our correspondence, could care less, and you're not gonna get money from anybody.
But he also doesn't put them on the highway.
And
like
who did?
These happen to have been political signs.
Okay, but-
And it really bothered me, and it still bothers me, as you can tell, that I put myself at risk to have to take those signs out
Yeah, I
because
don't-
they are illegally placed there.
I don't see a solution. Like, I don't know how you hold, you know, you said it was a political sign. I don't know how you hold a candidate, you fine a candidate for something that he didn't do.
I don't
Well,
think you-
as I understand
Yeah.
it, all the different parties have committees. And
Nah.
these committees do these, I don't know, somebody has to be responsible for this kind of stuff. I don't know how you do
You
it.
can't.
You could order signs on the internet for any candidate you want. I mean, locally is different, but if some, I don't want to get political, but if someone was supporting a certain person in the governor's race, they could order a sign, get it in the mail, and put it out illegally, and
Agreed.
you're going to find the wrong person.
Okay, well, I'm just going to tell you that those signs that were put on that highway were signs that I had already taken down
I think
in different parts of town, because I marked them all to see where they were going. And that's where they went. And that is horrible as far as I'm concerned. First of all, they're not supposed to be on the highway. That's in the law.
Yeah,
if
we all
I'm
agree.
correct.
Peter, I think we all agree with you. I think we all understand the risk and the safety issue there. I just don't, you know, there's a million codes that we have I'd like to enforce better, but I'm told there's just no way to prosecute them sometimes, and I think that's what we're saying is, you know, essentially. So what we could do is some sort of measure is talk to the county chairs of those party. I
Fine.
know when people that ran last year, we had a handshake agreement, and I think we abided by that pretty well. So, you know, that's one thing that we can do.
That's at least something.
I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And I wasn't dismissing your concern, Peter. Just I don't know how you find someone who didn't do it. You know?
Nor do I.
Yeah.
Boils down to enforcement again, and quite honestly, not getting sued probably. I'm sure if, you know, oh, that was Peter Bell, you know, to pick on you, and then I try to fine you, I'll probably be in a lawsuit because I can't prove that it was you when it really wasn't you.
I understand.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is I want to let you understand that there's dangers to my job for something that I don't think should be there in the first place.
And having done that job myself, that's why your vehicle, or the one I was using, was equipped with flashers, and I wore a very bright safety vest while I was doing that.
I have safety vests, I have flashers, I have light bar in the back. Doesn't give me any solace. I'm still scared to death to go take those things out with people passing me at 85 miles an hour.
My wife saw you running from the triangle at Donsberg in 22 with a sign. So
My advice
I know what you
is
do.
With
Yep.
the flashers on, you park on the triangle and protect yourself with the vehicle.
That's what I've tried to do. I'm just saying that we pick up signs all year long. It just so happens that there's a lot more now. If there can be some kind of an understanding to not put them in, and just understand too, if I had to pick them up and I felt endangered, how about the guys putting them in? They were in danger too.
Yeah.
So if there can be some kind of understanding to not put them in dangerous locations so they don't have to put them in and I don't have to take them out.
Anywhere on a road is a dangerous location. You don't even have to be on the road. Unfortunately, there was someone killed putting up signs here in Putnam County at one point in time.
Agreed.
And it can happen at any point in time. You got to be careful.
The more local the race is, the more familiar people are with local regulations, and as races get bigger, you know, there's candidates. Well, obviously you have statewide
Yeah.
candidates, but
I don't look forward to next year.
Okay.
Yeah, but you have candidates that are running in multiple towns.
The other thing
multiple
is
counties with different
to
laws.
say what Eric had mentioned before. I not only pick up signs, but I give out tickets, and I give out NOVs, and I give out parking tickets in the same round that I'm going to pick up signs.
I guess, Peter, my comment was more that, you know, we've probably spent 2 or 3 hours on this code, and it's not about you, but
Yeah.
there's other codes that probably need more attention, so there's better enforcement. And, you know, we're trying to solve for every scenario here, and we don't give that focus on the rest of our codes, and that's what's discouraging for me.
Well, then, just come up with a code and let's start making changes to them.
And I appreciate what you're doing, but, you know, I think that you would agree there's a lot of issues out there.
There are. And the one thing that word that I don't know is discretion, because I can't. If something is illegal and against the code, I write it up, I pull it out, or whatever. I don't care whose it is. If it's illegal, I've got to pull it. And if it's in violation, I have to write it up, no matter who it is or what it is.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's asking you to do anything different
Okay.
there. The only thing that I think we were doing, and we talked about it 2 weeks ago, was, you know, the 15 feet versus the actual property line. You know, while you're driving around, you don't know the actual property line. You're presuming that 15 feet is right, and that was really my issue with it.
Yeah,
I'm
and-
not
and-
asking for discretion, I'm not asking
Yeah,
for favors.
Yeah,
nothing.
and please understand
Yeah.
that, you know, that whatever you come up with the law, there are code enforcement officers that have to apply that law. So it's got to be safe for them, safe for me, and, you know, and just be coherent. Whichever way you go, make sure we understand exactly what we have to do.
Right, that's why I think moving it to the 3 for residential will basically make most residential signs okay. So you won't have to be stopping on small roads, you won't have to be, you know, potentially trespassing and making yourself uncomfortable.
And I absolutely believe, from code perspective, that commercials should be 15 feet back. I think that, you know, there is enough room in most commercials. Some of them there's not. I know I can see a couple in my head right now, but you can move them around. If you want them right in front of your commercial property, it might not be 15 feet. Well, maybe you can't have it there. So that we need to be, you know, understand too. You know, what does that 15 feet mean for commercial? Is it 15 feet or is it the front of the building?
It's 10 feet
So,
now.
yeah, I mean, all those, that has to be spelled out.
Well, I guess in that case, it would be 15 feet or the property line, the way it's written now, right?
And it'll be 10 or the property line, but yeah,
Yeah. So if the property line was 5, they could put it within 5,
right.
yeah.
Well, you probably will not find that on any road.
Oh, the commercial.
Well, our zoning code probably wouldn't allow it anyway. Not our
Yeah.
zoning, but the planning board, when they're reviewing it, there's only so many feet away from the property line.
Right, and more, you know, commercial property tends to be on the bigger roads, which
Yeah.
would have larger right-of-ways and stuff like that.
Okay.
I think commercial definitely should be larger than residential, but I think 10 is a reasonable compromise here. But-
That's up to you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, number 3 is discussion amend zoning for keeping of animals. We are going to schedule a public hearing this evening for that, which will be going. Good.
Oh, before I was actually going to say, I think this needs to go back to the planning board based on some things that were concerning as I read through it.
Yeah.
I could walk you through those.
Well, maybe what we should do in this case, I have some, and you might have some of the same ones, especially pigs. I mean, pigs are pretty damn smelly.
Pigs is one we discussed.
And I am telling
yeah.
you right now, you couldn't put a mile away.
And
So
Tony,
do-
I think the planning board had discussed making pigs a large hoot. I think I went to that one, and
Here it's not. It's,
here it's not. I think that was
Changed?
No, I just think it was overlooked.
okay. I'll tell you what, why don't we, you send yours, we'll just put together and send it back and ask them to relook at it.
Yeah, and I'll just so you guys are on the same page. I think the horse one, the setbacks don't align with what's allowed. So 80,000 square feet, you could have one horse. 120,000 square feet, you could have 2. But they need to be, or their manure or whatever needs to be 200 feet from the property line. And with a lot that size, it would be impossible to be 200 feet from the property line. So I'm not saying it needs to be less, maybe the acreage needs to be more, but I just think they need to review that.
And we can make changes, but I think we should at least ask them to look at it one more time
I
with
think
our
we should give
suggestions.
them our concerns and let them come back.
Yeah.
And then the only other section was section D, it's conflicting, A and B are conflicting about what pre-existing is, and either it's pre-existing or it needs to be resolved in 180 days. It's not clear to me what that means.
Oh, grandfather.
Yeah, yeah.
And my other concern, I'm not sure how to address it, you know, a person may have the proper square footage, but when they go to put in, like if you have a triangle, the guy might have 100 acres and they're gonna put it right up in the front, right next to another residential unit, and there's a problem, I think, with that as well, but I don't know how that can be worded.
And Tony, a builder's acre is 40,000 square feet, an acre's more than that. Do we use builder's acre across the board?
Well, they have, and we had something we were supposed to be doing as we're going along. We
Right.
had a conversation maybe about 6 months ago. We have to change that wording because an acre should be an acre. We should not have such a thing as 40,000 square foot being a building. I think we have to revert back. Unfortunately, there'd be properties to be grandfathered in because they were put in as an acre with 40,000 square feet. And I think we should go per acre. And I could have sworn the way
When
this
you
was,
look up like your tax stuff,
it tells you how many acres.
but is that a 40,000 square foot acre
No,
or a real
it's
acre?
it's a real acre.
Okay.
That's a real acre.
Why don't you come up, come on,
I think it's 40,000,
Or
43,000.
43,060
43,
or
580 or
something.
something?
560.
560, that's close.
So your information
Yes.
is
How does the
a,
code go?
is a real acre.
So an official definition of an acre is 43,560 square feet. Our residential zoning code says R20, R40, R60, R80, R160. That's using square feet of the parcel, which we commonly refer to as half acre zoning, acre zoning, and we go like that, but it's not a true acre, and that's the problem we were having with some aspects of the code, is some of it says acre, some of it says, refers to the zoning, and the zoning is actually less than a full acre. So like an R40 zone says you have to have at least 40,000 square feet of land, whereas an acre would be 43,560.
And I think
But
we
if we're
should,
making a new code for animals, we shouldn't say 40,000 square feet. We
No.
should mean a true acre. You would agree?
It's going to be more of an administrative thing, because like I think even town of Patterson has a similar thing we do for horses, right? 2 acres for your first horse and 1 extra horse for every acre thereafter. Acre. Now, I never went to Patterson and said, can I have 3.275, you know,
you have to get a
but you
variance.
could split hairs that way and say, listen, the code says acre, but I have more than that, so, you know,
This specifically says square feet though, not acre.
Okay.
It seems like it conflicts with where we want to go.
I think maybe if we come to a consensus as to how we want to reference things in our code, if it's, whether it's by zoning, square footage, or by acreage, and an official acre, then you can begin to, you start there, then you can do everything else after that.
Yeah.
Because
So
at least your
R43.
references are, then your references are consistent.
No, R40, it could be, as an acre is 43,000, whatever.
Yeah, we were just
We can-
joking, but yeah.
And I'm not advocating either way, I just.
No, I think we should go
it's
to
not
an acre.
clear.
Me
If that's
neither.
where we're going, I'd rather write a new law that
Identify
reference the real acre.
acre as an acre.
Or you could say, for all intents and purposes in the town code, 1 acre, as referred to in the code, is 40, whatever you decide, whether it's 40,000 square feet or 43,560.
Okay.
But if my tax bill is a real acre, then I think everything should be a real acre.
It is.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
but
so,
your tax bill is.
Not
your-
bill, but, you
Yeah,
know,
no,
my
I know.
tax
Your inventory is what's
inventory.
actually there, regardless of what your zoning is.
Right.
So you could be in an R20 zone, but have 1.5 acres. So
Oh,
you,
but same thing in the horse scenario.
And reverse.
I mean, they could be in, well, whatever, R160 and have 20 acres, you know, so.
because there's a requirement of 5 acres for such, and some people only have 4-point-something acres, and they're allowed to have something that they shouldn't really be allowed to because it's not an acre. So we're all in agreement that we should change our code. An acre is a true acre. And they can keep R40, R20, whatever, but it's, you have to split hairs. 4360, it's a lot easier to use 40-20 like they're using, but the reality is if it's 5 acres, 5 acres should be 5 acres.
And I'm not saying we need to change everything day one, but as we do something, we should at least institute it the way we want it.
Okay.
And is that something that goes to the planning board as well?
I don't know about that part, but this, if we refer that back for an acre, and I have the conversation back and forth with Ashley, we had that at one point in time.
Yep.
And we kind of like just froze it for a while because something came up, but we'll go back to it and say, look, we have to reword this to be an acre is a true acre. Okay?
Thanks, Lloyd.
Yep.
Okay, acre. Okay.
Do we have to make a motion to send it back to them or anything, or that's just administrative?
Well, I'll make a motion to send this back to the planning board with some comments from the town board of what we'd like them to review.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That'll be done tomorrow. Okay, now, I'll make a motion now to go into the regular portion of the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First one is a resolution, release performance bond, Dunmore Corporation. Now therefore be resolved that the bond amount shall be reduced and established for the project set forth below. Project name, Dunmore International Corp. Erosion and sediment control, bond amount $4,100, reduced to 0. Dunmore International Corp. Landscape maintenance bond, 2 years, $100,000, I wish, $1 million. And be further resolved that upon posting an aforementioned maintenance bond, the town clerk be and she hereby is duly authorized to cancel return to the erosion and sediment control bond herefore established in connection with the project, and be further resolved that a certified copy of this resolution shall be transmitted by the town clerk to the planning board secretary and building inspector forthwith. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2, resolution to establish performance bond, Roth Nursery subdivision. Now therefore be resolved that the bond amount shall be established for the project set forth below. Project name, Roth Nursery subdivision, site improvements, erosion and sediment control. Site improvements is $580,000, erosion and sediment, $33,000, total $613,000. And be further resolved that no certificates of occupancy for any residences constructed within the subdivision unless the public improvements roads are complete to a level approved by the town engineer and full site improvement bond is in place. And be resolved that a certified copy of this resolution shall be transmitted by the town clerk to the planning board secretary and building inspector forthwith. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Resolution, appointment of Board of Assessment Review. Now therefore it be resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast hereby appoints Chris DeBellis to fill the unexpired term of the town of Southeast Board of Assessment Review, such term to expire September 30, 2024, and be further resolved that the appointment shall take effect upon the taking and filing of the appropriate oath of office with the clerk of the town of Southeast. So move for discussion.
Second.
Got that okay? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next is a long-awaited development here for the Village of Brewster in the town of Southeast. First are number 4, it's A, the full environment assessment form, which is part 1. We're moving, well, I guess we'll do them individually because I know they have to go in a particular order. So the first one is removing the environmental assessment form, part 1, which is 13 pages long. So I move that first. Is there a second?
Second.
Now, just so the public knows, there's proposal in the Village of Brewster to renovate the entire renaissance of the village, or revitalization and renaissance and moving forward. And the town would like to participate in the way, and this is going to start that process. So, all in favor on that, round 1?
Can I just ask one
Yep.
simple question?
Yep.
What are we moving, just accepting that EAF? What are we,
We're moving it forward. In other words, we have to do it in this order, and the resolution is the final. I think it's backwards, but that's the way it has to go down.
okay.
Hate it, but it is. Okay, so that's part 1. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 4B is part 2, and it's a map summary report, and this one is 10 pages long. So we will move that as the second item.
Second.
And all in favor? Aye. And part 3, let me just get to part 3, which is part 3, okay. gotta find my 3. B4, it's 4C, I'm not finding 4C.
It's the one that looks different. It's more text.
You know, next time I'm gonna put tabs on these, when you got so many pages to each one.
Oh, yeah, looks like this.
I gotta find it. Oh, that's
It's
why,
not-
okay,
it's
yeah.
not, written on.
Oh, I missed, okay, there's part 3, okay. That's for sale of 1 and 67 Main Street. So we move that one next. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And it actually says 4C.
Oh, that one.
D is the resolution.
Okay, and 4D is the actual resolution itself. And that's proposed conveyance of 67 and 1 Main Street determinations under New York State Environmental Review Act, SECRA. Now therefore be resolved that the town board, as lead agency for the purpose of SECRA, review at the proposed conveyance of 2 town-owned properties known generally as 1 and 67 Main Street to iPark Brewster, and in conjunction with the town planning consultants, has reviewed the full environmental assessment forms, part 1, 2, and 3, has designated the proposed conveyance of the town-owned properties as an unlisted action pursuant to SECRA, and provided any conveyance of the town-owned properties includes the following condition. Buyer acknowledges that the property includes nationally and state registered historic structures in recognition of property, good luck with that word.
Intrinsic.
He just said it, historic value. Buyer agrees that in addition to any other protections offered to the property, buyer shall, 1, make all reasonable efforts to protect and maintain the property's historic appearance, structure, and integrity, and shall not demolish or substantially demolish the property, and 2, meaningfully consult with the New York State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, during the planning and approval process for the property reuse, the redevelopment, adaptation, or substantial alteration. The town board finds and determines that the proposed conveyance of the town-owned properties will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment for the reasons elaborated in Part 3 of the full environmental impact statement, which is made part of this resolution, and issues its negative declaration pursuant thereto. So move for discussion.
Second.
I'd like to thank everyone that's participated in this process so far. It's long, it's still got a ways to go, but I think it's a good way for recovery for the village and will help out the town tremendously. Any other comment?
I agree.
Agreed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 5, a resolution adoption of the 2023 annual budget. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast hereby adopts the 2023 preliminary budget as amended, and for the annual budget for the town of Southeast for 2023 budget year, and be further resolved that the town clerk is authorized and directed to cause a copy of the 2023 annual budget as adopted to be published on the town's website, and that suffice copies therefore be made available in the town clerk's office for public inspection. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 6, it's a GMO Associates LLC versus Town of Southeast Settlement of Certiorari proceeding. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the Town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendations of its professional advisors and authorize the town attorney to execute a stipulation of settlement, consent judgment, and/or order on consent in accordance with said recommendation for the following. Petitioner, GML Associates LLC, tax ID 57.17-1-5, year 2022, assessment $846,943, settled assessment $670,000, and be further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all stipulations, consent orders, or documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlements. So move for discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's see.
So
So we're gonna make a, I'm gonna,
table this or something?
what's that?
Could we table that, the public hearing?
No, keeping that, yeah, that one's, okay.
You can-
There's been a motion to table number 7. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Now, we will now make a motion, so I'd like to waive the rules to allow a motion to come on, and that's to cite a public hearing for December 1st for the amend Chapter 138, Article 10 signs.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now that's on, letting us put it on. Now on the motion itself, I move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. How about the two little guys in the back? Want to make a comment?
They want to go home.
Thank you for coming.
They make a motion to
It's
close
a
the meeting.
lesson, it's their mandatory civics lesson.
They're very well behaved.
Really?
Very well.
Thank you.
Not a peep.
Should get a proclamation.
Town board members,
No comment.
No comment.
I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion. Yeah.
We close tonight's meeting?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.